In the cold, foggy streets of Paris in 1890, Gabrielle Bompard appeared to be just another young woman trying to survive. She had a soft voice, delicate features, and a quiet way of speaking that made people feel at ease. Neighbors described her as polite and harmless. If anyone passed her on the street, they would never imagine that her name would soon be linked to one of the most disturbing crimes of the century. But Gabrielle's life had never been as simple as it seemed. She came from a troubled home filled with conflict and instability. As a teenager, she ran away, hoping to escape the chaos and find a better life. Instead, she found herself alone in a harsh city that showed little mercy. With no money and no support, she learned quickly how to survive. She adapted, changed, and slowly built a new identity, one that hid her pain behind a calm and innocent face. Living on the edge of society, Gabrielle became skilled at reading people. She knew how to gain trust, how to appear vulnerable, and how to make others believe in her. But inside, she carried fear, anger, and a growing sense that survival sometimes required dangerous choices. Everything changed when she met Michel Eyraud. He was older, confident, and strangely charming. Unlike others, he didn't see Gabrielle as weak. He saw potential. He listened to her, understood her struggles, and offered her something she had been searching for: security. But Michel was not who he seemed. Behind his charm was a manipulative mind, always planning, always calculating. And as Gabrielle grew closer to him, she didn't realize she was stepping into a world far darker than anything she had known before. A world she might never escape. Michel Eyraud was not a man who believed in slow success. He wanted wealth, and he wanted it quickly. To him, rules were obstacles, and people were opportunities. Once Gabrielle entered his life, he began shaping her into someone who could help him achieve his goals. At first, his ideas seemed harmless, small tricks, minor lies, nothing too serious. Gabrielle was unsure, but Michel had a way of speaking that made everything sound reasonable. He would smile, reassure her, and remind her that the world had never been kind to them. According to him, they were simply taking what they deserved. Slowly, Gabrielle began to change. She started dressing more elegantly, speaking with more confidence, and learning how to attract attention. Michel coached her carefully: what to say, how to smile, when to act shy. It was all part of a larger plan. Their target would be wealthy men. Gabrielle would approach them, gain their trust, and arrange private meetings. Meanwhile, Michel would remain hidden, waiting for the right moment. At first, Gabrielle didn't fully understand how far Michel was willing to go. She thought it was only about stealing money. But Michel had something much darker in mind. Then came the name that would seal their fate. Toussaint-Augustin Gouffé, a respected court officer with money and status. Michel believed he was the perfect victim, cautious but not too suspicious enough to avoid a charming young woman. Gabrielle wrote to him, pretending to be interested. Her words were soft, inviting, and carefully chosen. Gouffé responded. The meeting was arranged in a rented room in Paris. As the day approached, Gabrielle felt a growing sense of unease. Something didn't feel right. But Michel dismissed her fears, reminding her of everything they stood to gain. Behind his calm expression, the plan was already set in motion, and there was no turning back. The evening felt unusually quiet, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Inside the rented room, everything had been carefully arranged. The curtains were drawn, the furniture neatly placed, and the air carried a strange tension that was impossible to ignore. Gabrielle stood near the window, trying to steady herself. Her hands felt cold, and her thoughts raced with uncertainty. She knew something terrible was about to happen, even if she didn't fully understand how far it would go. Then came the knock. Toussaint-Augustin Gouffé entered the room, calm and unsuspecting. He greeted Gabrielle politely, his voice warm and trusting. For a few moments everything seemed normal. Gabrielle spoke softly, just as Michel had taught her. She smiled, asked simple questions, and kept Gouffé distracted. But behind the curtain, Michel was waiting. Seconds felt like minutes. Gabrielle could hear her own heartbeat, loud and fast. She avoided looking toward the curtain, as if doing so would make everything real. Then, without warning, it happened. Michel burst out from his hiding place, moving with sudden force. Before Gouffé could react, a rope was thrown tightly around his neck. The room exploded into chaos. Gouffé struggled desperately, knocking over a chair as he tried to break free. Gabrielle stepped back, frozen in shock. For a brief moment she could have intervened. She could have shouted, run, or tried to stop it. But she didn't. Instead, she stood there, watching as the struggle grew weaker, and then stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Michel quickly regained his control, his voice calm as if nothing unusual had happened. He ordered Gabrielle to help him. Together they wrapped the lifeless body and forced it into a large trunk. Later that night, they traveled far from Paris, abandoning the trunk in a remote area. As they walked away, neither of them spoke. But deep down, Gabrielle knew nothing would ever be the same again. Days passed, then weeks. At first, it seemed like the crime had vanished without a trace. Paris continued its busy rhythm, unaware of the horror hidden far from the city. Gabrielle and Michel moved carefully, avoiding attention, convincing themselves that they had escaped. But the truth has a way of resurfacing. In a quiet, remote area outside Paris, a strange smell began to spread. It was faint at first, barely noticeable, but as days went by, it grew stronger, impossible to ignore. Locals reported it, and soon authorities were called to investigate. What they found inside the abandoned trunk was beyond disturbing. The body of Toussaint-Augustin Gouffé lay inside, badly decomposed but still identifiable. The discovery sent shockwaves throughout the country. Newspapers exploded with headlines and fear spread quickly. Who could commit such a cold and calculated crime? The police began their investigation immediately. They examined every detail: the trunk, the location, the condition of the body. Each clue was small, but together they began to form a pattern. One witness remembered something important: a young woman seen with Gouffé shortly before he disappeared. That woman was Gabrielle. Her description spread across police stations, and soon her identity was confirmed. But by then, she and Michel were already gone. Using false names and moving constantly, they traveled across Europe, trying to stay one step ahead. For a while, it seemed like they might succeed, but investigators refused to give up. They tracked movements, followed leads, and slowly closed in. Their persistence paid off when Michel was finally captured. Under intense questioning, he broke. He confessed to the crime, but placed much of the blame on Gabrielle. Soon after, Gabrielle was arrested too. As she sat in custody, the world waited. Everyone wanted to know the truth, and what she would say next would change everything. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, curious citizens, and legal experts all gathered to witness what had become one of the most talked about trials in France. Every detail of the crime had shocked the public, but now all eyes were on Gabrielle Bompard. She appeared fragile, dressed simply, her expression calm but distant. To some, she looked like a victim. To others, she looked like someone hiding a dangerous truth. When it was her turn to speak, the room fell completely silent. Gabrielle claimed she had been under hypnotic control. She told the court that Michel Eyraud had manipulated her mind, using hypnosis to force her into obedience. According to her, she had no real control over her actions the night of the murder. She described feeling trapped inside her own body, aware of what was happening but unable to stop it. The claim shocked everyone. Some people believed her. At the time, hypnosis was still poorly understood, and many wondered if it could truly control a person's will. Experts were called to testify, debating whether such influence was even possible. Others were not convinced. They argued that Gabrielle's actions before and after the crime showed awareness and intention. They believed her story was carefully planned, a way to escape full responsibility. The courtroom became divided, filled with tension and uncertainty. Meanwhile, Michel showed no hesitation. He admitted his role without remorse, his cold demeanor leaving little doubt about his guilt. In the end, The jury reached its decision. Michel Eyraud was sentenced to death. Gabrielle, however, received a significantly lighter punishment. The verdict shocked the public. Many felt justice had not been fully served. Years later, Gabrielle was released and disappeared quietly, leaving behind a case filled with unanswered questions. Was she truly controlled, or had she simply played her role perfectly until the very end? The mystery remains.
If this story pulled you into its darkness, there's much more waiting. Subscribe now and step into real crimes, hidden truths, and stories that refuse to be forgotten.